Everybody, this is Hondo Carpenter, your Las Vegas Raiders beat writer on SI and the host of the Las Vegas Raiders Insider Podcast. Joined now, as I am each and every week. You just know, Sunday Fundy. Sunday is the day. Matt Hladek, the editor and publisher of the Spun.com comes on, the best sports aggregate site for kind of pop culture meets sports world. Does such a great job. It's in my favorites. I have for nearly 15 years or however long. Matt, how long you been with the Spun? I know you used to work for Rivals. How long you been with the Spun?
I've been at the Spun for 10 years now.
Oh my gosh. I
Yeah, and
remember
I've
you
been on this
calling
show
me.
for 13 or so, yeah.
Yeah, I remember you though calling me when you were thinking about doing that move. That's phenomenal. But
Yeah.
I read it every day. I love it. Let's get right to it. I don't want to get into the weeds here because I want to stick on point with this first question for you. I don't want to talk about should the Raiders sign Aaron Rodgers, should they not, all that stuff. I want to talk about Maxx Crosby. He comes out and says he really wants Aaron Rodgers to play in Vegas. Now, in the interest of full disclosure, I'm a friend, and whether I agree with Max or not is irrelevant because we're not talking Aaron Rodgers. But I saw a lot of people get angry with him saying, hey, you're not a GM, just play defensive end. I don't have a problem with anybody, whether I agree with them or disagree with them. I like it when players give opinions. I like it when players care like fans do. I like it when players are vocal. And I don't have, and it's not because it's Max. I like it. I think it shows ownership. I think it allows fans to react and see that they care. If Max was like, yeah, I don't care. I'm going to get my extension, whoever. Even if I disagree with Max, I I love players coming out and taking a stand. I think it shows, he didn't come out and say, if you don't hire him, I'm leaving. No, none of that crap. He just said, hey, I would like it. I'm just curious. Do you like it?
I do. I think that, it shows kind of like you said, that ownership of the team and making the team your own. And I think that one of the other things that I like about it is, I think that if you're Maxx Crosby, you've made a lot of commitments to the Raiders over the years. You re-up with them. You're committed to this franchise, and you want to see some type of return on investment. So I think you're looking for the best return on investment. You're looking to get things turned around. Obviously, I'm sure Maxx Crosby knows that the Raiders are turning over every stone to find the next franchise quarterback, which it could be either free agency, it could be the draft, and whatnot. But I think by him saying, let's take a look at Aaron Rodgers, let's take a look at this option, it shows that he is really trying his hardest to make things work where he is.
I just think the more players are talking, the more they're out there. Like I'll tell you a funny story. I cannot tell you the number of NFL people, executives, who hate players having podcasts. They hate players doing interviews. Outside of the team, I love it. I think it's great. I think every player should have a podcast. I talked with a young man at the combine who I've known most of his life. Okay, I'll tell you who later. I've known the kid most of his life. I've probably met him when he was 3, but I know his family. And he said to me, we were literally just chatting as people who've known each other forever. And we were talking about something. And he said, you got any advice? I said, yeah, get good enough where you can have a podcast. Make a team so you can have a podcast and then talk. Don't do things detrimental to your team, but talk about whatever. Have a voice. Let people connect with you. I really like where this is going. I'll give you another example. LeBron. Okay. Whether you like LeBron, you don't like LeBron. Whether you're smart and realize that LeBron is a good player, but he's not Jordan, Or maybe you're deceived and you think he is. Just making a little opinion there. But whatever. I don't have a problem with LeBron giving opinion. I don't have a problem with LeBron. Uh, there's a lot of things he says that I really agree with. There's a lot he says I don't agree with. But I don't have a problem with them having a voice and exercising it. I just wish in football we saw that more. Again, do you see where I'm going? Give me your perspective.
Well, I think that you probably saw it less, or still see it a little less than maybe in basketball because of it's just a different kind of sport. There's less guys on a basketball team. It's more of an individual sport, even though it is obviously a heavy team sport. It's not the same as football. But you are starting to see more and more voices in the podcasting space. Obviously, Micah Parsons is one of the big ones who, on a star level in the NFL. And then you have the St. Brown brothers, and there's some other ones out there. Maxx Crosby, yeah, of course. I think that it's a fine line because I think we as guys in the media appreciate it because we get to see the players kind of express their opinions and throw out what they're looking for or show a different side of them. Whereas I also understand that teams may not always love it. And I think as players, you have to be careful because I think it does make you an easy target because if you are on doing your podcast and your team isn't doing well and you're not, or if you have a bad game or two, or, it's normal stuff, things that happen in the ebbs and flows, you're going to get people saying, oh, if he wasn't, online all the time or podcasting, then, he should pay more attention to watching film or things, what have you. So I do think it's a little bit of a balance, but I'm kind of interesting to see how football podcasting from a player perspective has increased in recent years.
Yeah, and I think it's great that they bring their friends on and their other players or teammates on. I just think that's good for the game. I'm going to tell you a funny story. So I love hockey. I just love hockey. And I have several friends that are playing the NHL and coach, and I love hockey. I was talking to a superstar hockey player, and we were just chatting about we're actually going on a hunting trip coming up later this year. And we were talking about our trip, and I said to him, brother, you got to get a podcast. He's like, nobody cares what I think. I said, yes, they do. And I know him very well. We go on a trip every year. And I said, you have got to get a podcast. Your comments on the other sports, your comments on the game of hockey, your comments on everything are hilarious. And I just think the more we can proliferate and get all these athletes out there, I think it's good for athletes. And I was talking to a NCAA player this week, another great player. I'm not going to name the sport. And I said, you need to start a podcast. He's like, what? I go, you need to start a podcast. You're a great player. You're not a troublemaker. I want people to see you. You're an example of a student. Anyways, I just think it's cool. All right, let's turn to Aaron Rodgers on one more question. Allegedly, the Jets said, if we bring you back, we don't want you doing McAfee. Now, there's been some pushback on that we weren't against him doing McAfee. We just brought up if he would continue to do it, whatever. I think Pat McAfee's been great for sports. I love his show. And I don't have an issue with him doing Pat McAfee or any of that kind of stuff. I just don't have an issue with it. I don't have a problem with it. Do you like Pat McAfee's impact? And what do you think of an Aaron Rodgers? If you were the Raiders or you were a team looking at Aaron Rodgers, would that bother you?
I don't think I would particularly. I mean, I have no problem with McAfee's show. I think it's obviously been a major hit, and he kind of transformed himself into this, big sports radio podcaster, kind of on his own. Like he really is a bit self-made in that respect. As far as Rodgers goes, Aaron Rodgers is going to be pretty outspoken, regardless of whether he goes on Pat McAfee or not. I understand why teams are a little wary of it. I wouldn't particularly love it if I was a team. I don't know if it would be a deal breaker if I'm, desperate to bring in a quarterback and he makes sense. To me, I just think the Jets were ready to move on. I think that was sure they probably didn't appreciate him being on there every week, but I just think that by all accounts they were ready to kind of just end the partnership. I think they saw that the chance they took with him to try and get the team out of the doldrums and take a big swing at the quarterback spot. It didn't work out, partially through their own fault, partially through circumstance where he gets hurt in his first year there, which is bad luck. So I think they were ready to move on with a new staff and a new regime. And I think McAfee probably factored into it a little bit, but I think there were probably other things that went into it more.
All right. I want to talk to you about Brock Purdy gets an offer, $45 million per. Now, $45 million. Now, Matthew Stafford just was offered $50 million per. He gets a $45 million per offer. And San Francisco fans call it a slap in the face. Give me a freaking break. I really like Brock Purdy. I think he's an underrated quarterback. If I was a San Francisco fan, I would want them to re-sign Brock Purdy, period. I think he fits their system perfect. He's a great kid. Everybody loves Brock Purdy. But give me a break with this faux outrage, slap in the face. I'm not blaming you guys. You were quoting somebody when you reported it. I just think it's utterly ridiculous. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think it's tough to call any contract offer that's worth $45 million a slap in the face, especially for a guy who
per year.
Has per year exactly, especially for a guy who is not among the upper echelon in the NFL. I think he's probably been maligned somewhat still by his draft status being Mr. Irrelevant, and people have kind of doubted that he is a good quarterback, which he is. And I understand why the Niners would want to keep him. But when you look at what the going rates are for middle tier quarterbacks or slightly above average quarterbacks, he probably is thinking I can get something that starts with a 5, especially with the cap going up. So I would expect him to probably decline that offer, as most first offers get declined anyway. But it'll be interesting to see how they work it out, the Niners, because they could tag him for 2026 at, I believe, $41 million. And then if they wanted to double tag him the following year, I think it'd be $51 million. So they're probably thinking, hey, that's what the tags are. We're going to kind of try to split the difference and start with $45 million a year. It'll be very interesting to see how those contract negotiations play out.
I'm going to tell you right now, I will be stunned. And I'm not guessing here. I'm talking to people around Brock and around the Niners. I fully expect him back with the 49ers. And
so do I, for sure.
Yeah. All right. You guys had an interesting story. Now, there are certain fan bases in the NFL that are iconic. Okay? That are just, whether you love their team or hate their team, they're iconic. One of those teams is the Dallas Cowboys. I have this picture that I love to post on social media. Every time they do something stupid or weird or get in the news, it's like half a frame of Stephen A. Smith looking. I just think it's hilarious. Where fans are now like, oh, we don't suck. They're up to something. And I have to tell you this. A player texted me this story off of your site because they learned who you were watching our pod, and they read your site all the time. And they sent me this, and I want to read to you. This is from an NFL player. This is what they said about your story about NFL convinced the Cowboys are doing something. You ready? Hondo, we've heard of QAnon, the political group. I now think there's actually a group we should call Cowboy Anon. Talk about this story, because I just find it funny. And you got to think that's cool. Players are sending me that.
No, definitely. Listen, I this is, I believe, about them. They created a lot of cap space on Tuesday by restructuring CeeDee Lamb. Obviously, the Cowboys have taken heat over, the last couple of years for being a little bit hesitant in free agency, to say the least. They have given their own guys big paydays. Obviously, Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, they're coming to an agreement with Osa Odigizua before he hits free agency, the defensive tackle. But they have not shopped in the big, spender area for outside guys, outside the organization. Micah Parsons has said he wants to see them, trade, should we spend more money? He wants to see them, be more aggressive. So people are kind of thinking that that's what's coming here. But with the Cowboys, I do want to kind of believe it when I see it, because we've seen them say they're all in. We've seen them say they're going to do things differently, and then they kind of operate on the same plane. So that will be interesting to follow starting, this week coming up with the tampering period and when guys actually start signing.
That is a fascinating fan base, isn't it?
It is. I mean, it's definitely, it's a fan base that you can't live without if you're the NFL, for better or worse.
Cowboy non. What do you think of that?
Interesting. I wouldn't have thought of that.
All right. Eagles make a huge contract to Saquon. I love this. Now, as some people will remember, begin talking that there was a real shift in the NFL after this season with running backs. We've seen them move away. Now the NFL is, like it always does, the pendulum is swinging back. He's earned it. Model citizen. I don't remember who did it. It may have been Pat McAfee on social media, but somebody tweeted the Hard Knocks video of the Giants talking about letting him go, and they go, "This aged well." Your thoughts on Saquon? I think he earned every dime of the big deal. I have no issue with it. I thought it was great. And as a Giants fan, is it still giving you nightmares as you put on your Saquon Barkley underoos at night to go to bed?
It's definitely still tough. I think just not so letting him go is the one thing, I think, because they misread the market and kind of didn't appreciate what his value would be around the league. Not to mention the fact that they weren't able to maximize his talents when he was healthy with the Giants, even though he did have some injuries, unfortunately. But I think getting to what the Eagles did, I think the Eagles were smart. They extend guys early, always, whether it's their outside free agents or their own drafted guys. And it's a way to kind of put some more money in those players' pockets right away up front. They can then, the way they structure their deals now, Saquon signed through 2028. He'll be, I think, 31 when that season hits. He might still be really good at 31. He might have another injury, or he might be declining a little bit. But either way, the Eagles are taken care of because they have no problem with those void years. He gets his cash up front. He gets the distinction of saying the highest paid running back ever. And I think it's a win-win all around. Quickly on the running back market, I do think the Eagles and also the Ravens with Derrick Henry and the Packers with Josh Jacobs, they and a couple other teams, they smartly kind of bought the dip with running backs. The market had depreciated too much where people were, had undervalued running backs or kind of thought they were, one and the same too much. So I think those teams were smart in realizing there's a few guys, Saquon at the top of the list, who are playmakers at the position and, are worth paying big money when you have that established, that base to work with like those teams did. Do I think it's now would be smart for all teams to kind of spend big money on contracts for running backs or, go for a running back before they have their team built up? No, because I still think they're still dependent on the success of the guys up front and some of the support system. Obviously, Saquon Barkley, as talented as he is, he didn't have the success with the Giants that he did in Philly. A large reason was because they didn't have the offensive line and supporting cast. Josh Jacobs had some big numbers with the Raiders, but they didn't win a lot because the rest of the team around him wasn't as good. And then he goes to Green Bay, and obviously he has a great season, and they make the playoffs. Same thing with the Ravens with Derrick Henry, where the Titans had started to slip off, even though he was still really good. So I think you don't necessarily want to build your entire team around a running back or spend big there when you don't have a lot of the core pieces in place. But I think if you have a good foundation and there's a guy who's a true difference maker at the position, you're going to see teams spend more willingly than they have in the past, thanks to Saquon and the guys in last year's free agent class.
Totally agree with you. To me, I think the pendulum is shifted, but I don't think it's gone
The other
180
way.
degrees.
No.
I think now it's an elite back on an
Mhm.
elite team. You spend what you got to spend. Listen, great stuff as always. Thanks for taking part of your weekend with us. Can you tell everybody where do they find you on social media? Because people love following you and interacting with you talking sports.
Sure. You can find me on X or Twitter, whatever you call it, at MATTHLADIK919. And I'm always on there. And I've had a lot of Raider fans come over and follow me over the last year or so, and always welcoming everybody.
Thanks. Talk to you later, my friend.